Okay, good morning. So for everyone out there, come on, grab a seat. A few more folks coming in. Well, thank you all for being here today. My name is Stephanie Markich. I'm one of the co-leaders of this event. I'm a 1999 West Point grad. I'm also the president of our West Point Society here. So this is our 13th event, so we're very excited to be here and excited about the day. In my daytime job, I work for Procter & Gamble. I lead military recruiting at that company where I've been for 20 years. So we're very excited. We have a full team of volunteers here that are excited to spend the day with you. And we're really hoping that you get something out of today. So it's your opportunity to learn and to participate, to make new friends, and just, you're really gonna get out of today what you put into it. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are you gonna get from today? So you're gonna start off in this morning session for about an hour, and then you're gonna break into small groups. And in those small groups, you're obviously gonna discuss what you heard here in the morning session. You're gonna do a personal values exercise, and then you're gonna learn about the ethical decision-making model, and you're gonna put that into good use in some small group discussion. So again, lots of great opportunities to meet new friends, make new contacts, and just learn, because all of you guys are from, very different backgrounds throughout the tri-state area here, large schools, small schools, public schools, private schools, different activities, so you're all gonna bring a unique perspective, and we really hope that you get something out of today. Next slide. Okay, so as I just covered this, we're gonna be in here this morning, then we're gonna break into small groups. You're gonna remain in that small group for the day. You'll get a break, and then we'll have lunch. At the end of the day, we're gonna come back in here, and we're gonna hear from our scholarship finalists, as well as you're sitting in these groups today, we're gonna ask at the end of the day, what are some key takeaways? What are some of the things you've learned? How are you gonna go put this in action? So part of the reason that we ask schools to send us sophomores and juniors is so you can take some of the things that you learn here today and go put them into use in your schools, in your communities, in your activities, churches, whatever you do. We're really hoping that you learn something and you take it back and you put it in action. So really try to make the most of today. Your schools all found it valuable to send you here, so really try to make the most out of today. Next slide. Okay, so after this, you're gonna continue your development. So as I said, you're gonna take this back. And then at some point today, we'll discuss the scholarships. So there's an opportunity for you to compete for a scholarship. So it's open to sophomores and juniors. You're gonna have to participate in some mentoring sessions over the next year, and then fill out an application where you could potentially be selected to come back next year to compete for a scholarship. So it's a great opportunity to earn some money for college from this experience. Next slide. So again, it's in honor of Chuck Ostman. This is the scholarship that we talked about. The information will be presented to the faculty members today, and then after this is over, it'll be available on our website so you know what you have to do to compete if you're interested. Okay, I'm gonna turn it over to Dan. Next slide.
All right, thanks, Stephanie. Ooh, almost took a spill there. All right, welcome everybody. Wow, look at this group. Man, I'm excited to be here. Thank you all for being here. I don't know if you know this, but this group is really special. Like each one of you students was selected to be here, hand-selected by your faculty, because they believe in you. They see something in you that's gonna allow you to help our community, help lead our community sometime in the future. Our community here in Cincinnati, in your schools, larger in the world, and that makes each one of you very special. So thanks for being here. And faculty, thank you for giving up your time to be here. My wife was a teacher, and so I know it's not easy to make these things happen. So thanks, it means something, and it says something about your own leadership that you were able to make the sacrifices you did to get here today. So thank you. I'm really excited. This is one of my favorite days of the year, honestly. So I'm gonna take the next 10 or so minutes to give us all kind of a foundation in the leadership principles that we're gonna talk about today. Kind of define really like what is leadership, what is ethics, so that we can go into our small groups and have that foundation to be able to have deeper conversations with our facilitators. All right, so to start off, next slide. What is leadership? I'm gonna ask for some examples here. When you think of leadership, what are some words that come to mind? Yeah, go ahead. Strength, good, that's a great one. What else? Yeah. Courage, oh, that's a good one. We're gonna see that one a little bit later. Yeah. Growth, I like that. Yeah, having a growth mindset. A few more. Confidence, that's a good one, yeah. Integrity, great. Any last ones? Yes, over here. Responsibility, yeah, we're gonna talk about that some today too. You guys are enthusiastic. Go ahead, what are yours? Humility, great. And last one? Wisdom. These are all great characteristics of leadership. I really like those. Some I've never heard before. So that's great. So we're gonna start with a very baseline definition of leadership. Next slide. So the process of influencing others to achieve a common goal. Very simple, nothing fancy. Doesn't necessarily mean it's good leadership or moral, ethical leadership. We'll talk about that. But it's influencing others to achieve a common goal, okay? And it's a process. It's not something you're just born with, it's something that can be developed. All right, next slide. So that's leadership, but what is great leadership? I'd say the words that you supplied there, those were great characteristics of leadership, okay? We don't always have great leaders. Sometimes we just have leaders that end up taking us someplace. So a few things that we use to describe great leadership. We're gonna have, next slide, courage, competence, and character. Courage, competence, and character. And I'm gonna explain a little bit more about what those are, give some examples. Does anybody know who said this quote and who's pictured there? Anybody have any ideas? No one recognizes him. He's about 17, he's getting ready to graduate from high school, and in a decade or two, he will change the way that this country looks at human rights. Yeah? Martin Luther King Jr., that's right. Next slide. That's him. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy. So can you go back real quick? Previous slide. So that, I think about that there, you know, getting ready to graduate high school, and basically he's 17 years old, I think, when he graduated, so he's in the same place you are now. And I think, what were the experiences that he had at this age that shaped how he looked at the rest of the world, shaped his character, gave him competence and courage to be the leader that he became? All right, let's go to the next slide. Let's talk about, next one. Let's talk about courage. Or let's talk about fear. Fear. So there's a lot of things that can make you fearful. And courage isn't the absence of fear. It is having that fear, embracing it, and then doing what you need to do, especially as a leader, despite of the fear. Okay, this woman, she's in grade school at the time. She said, fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. Anybody know who this is? This is a little tougher one. No guesses? Take a swing, be courageous. Yeah. Anne Frank? No, it kind of looks like her a little bit though. It's good, yeah. Dorothy Day? No, and I don't know who that is. You'll have to explain to me who that is later. All right, next slide. RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Okay, changed the way that we look at human rights as well in this country, and had to go through a lot of adversity to get there. Extremely courageous. All right, next slide. So competence. Let me ask this, who's a captain of their sports team here? Yeah, what do you do? Lacrosse, good. What's your name? Elle? All right, Elle, are you pretty good at lacrosse? You like to think so? Are you one of the best on your team, Elle? Maybe? Okay, good. Let me tell you this. If I gave you a tennis racket, you put down your lacrosse stick, I'm gonna give you a tennis racket. Now, who's on the tennis team? Yeah, what's your name? Sophia, okay. Elle, you're gonna go to Sophia's team, and tomorrow you're gonna be the captain of her tennis team. All right, how do you think you'll do as a captain? That's great. Yeah, she said some of the principles apply for sure. Those soft skills, those are going to be inherent in leading. But I tell you what, maybe you're also good at tennis and we don't know this, but typically it's tough to just transition like that, right? When you're a captain of a team or a leader, we expect you to have some competence in that skill, to be able to really benefit the team, to be able to take us where we know we need to go, right? And so building that confidence, sharpening those skills is necessary for you to be a really great leader. Anybody know who this person is? Progress occurs when courageous, skillful leaders seize the opportunity to change things for the better. Yes. That's not Gandhi. It looks like him with the glasses, though. I get this. Yes. Einstein? No, it's close, similar era. I thought I heard somebody say it over here. Truman. Yeah, how'd you know that? How'd you cheat? Can you explain how you cheated? Wow, that was fast. You're a fast Googler. You get like the Ray-Bans with the Facebook in them? No? Okay, all right. Yeah, that's right, next slide. So 33rd president of the United States. Couldn't wait, impatient, huh? Yeah, so he said this. He had to make some really tough decisions when he was president. Dropping the atomic bomb. Nothing he did during that time didn't require the competence to make really challenging political decisions to lead his teams, okay? All right, next. Now we're gonna talk about character. Anybody applying for a summer job or have applied for a summer job in the past, okay? How do you apply for summer jobs these days, or for jobs? How do you find them? What's that? Help Wanted sign? Okay, all right, so next slide. I want you to picture this. You're looking for a summer job, you get online, you go to Indeed, and you see this come up. Help Wanted for hazardous journey, low wages, bitter cold, long hours of complete darkness, safe return doubtful. Who would apply? No one really? I thought we might have some adventurers out there. No. What kind of people do you think that this ad would attract? What kind of employer do you think would even post this? Like, what are they going for? Well, that employer, next slide, was Mr. Ernest Shackleton, Sir Ernest Shackleton, in fact. Has anybody heard the story of Ernest Shackleton before? Yeah, quite a few people. Yeah, I think he's kind of had a resurgence. He used to be very famous back in the first half of the last century because of what happened here. So Ernest Shackleton, he was an explorer, an adventurer. He wanted to get to the South Pole, but being experienced, he knew that he's not going to be able to do that with just some standard sailors or some people who are just in to make a buck, some mercenaries. He knew that he needed the right type of people with the right values. So he posted that Help Wanted in a paper. It wasn't on Indeed, obviously. That Help Wanted in a paper to attract the right people with the right set of values. Okay, and then as he adventured to the South Pole, things didn't quite go the way he wanted. The weather, believe it or not, was worse than he expected in the South Pole. And within a short period of time, ice had surrounded his boat and got him stuck in the ice completely. And not only are they stuck in the ice, but then the ice goes in further and it crushes and it sinks their boat. So now he has 27 crewmen in Antarctica on the ice, not just for a few days or a few weeks, for 22 months they spend out there with nothing but themselves, some supplies, and the ice. Pretty tough leadership position to be in. And so Ernest Shackleton, we bring him up in this point because he demonstrated character like no other leader that we've studied before. His ability to empathize with his people, to show them that he really cared, that he had the competence, that he was able to make the courageous steps, and that he really cared for his people. He was going to watch out for them. His men, when we know this because of the diaries they left, they absolutely loved him. Despite the predicament that he got him in and not being able to save him for 22 months, they still loved it. They talk about that time and look back on it fondly because they embraced each other. They became a solid team, all because of his leadership. Okay, next slide. So, ethical leadership. We talked about what leadership is, the standard definition. This is our general definition of what ethical leadership is, and there's a lot of ways you can find it. You don't need to Google this one. This is just written by us. All right, so influencing people through personal example, providing purpose, direction, and motivation to accomplish the goals consistent with one's morals and values. So later today, we're going to ask you to say what your morals and values are. You're going to define that. There's going to be an exercise for it. And then we're going to go through some vignettes, and you're going to have to apply some of those morals and values. See, are you going to stand up on those, maybe able to change? But doing it consistent with one's morals and values is the important part. Okay, that's the ethical piece of leadership. All right, next slide real quick. So this is a lot to read. I'll give you a second to scan that. So all of your facilitators today, most of them at least, are West Point grads like myself from West Point 2011 and have led in the Army, led groups of people in the Army. And so we care about leadership quite a bit. And there's a reason that the Army cares about leadership quite a bit. There's a reason that businesses spend $14 billion on leadership training every year. And there's a reason that your scholarship applications, your college applications, are going to ask you about what is your leadership experience? What does leadership mean to you? It's because it really matters. Leaders are able to shape organizations, shape cultures, change the lives of individuals. And it's really tough to grow leaders as well. So we have a very high bar in the Army for leaders. We do a lot of training into it. And because you have a lot of Army leaders facilitating you today, we've been running this for 13 years because we know how important it is and we really care about it. All right, next slide. Okay, so before I hand you off to Jason, we're gonna go through one more tool. It's called the ethical decision-making model. It's a very tangible tool that you can use when you are in a dilemma, any sort of dilemma as a leader. You're gonna kind of have two components to it. One is the ethical component, and one is the leadership component. You're gonna have to tackle both of those today. Next slide. All right, so there's gonna be 3 steps. Each step has 3 steps within it. We'll talk through some of those. I'm gonna let your facilitators go more in depth, and we're just gonna go kind of surface level, all right, to get you started. Okay, so the first step, you're in a chaotic situation. Next slide, you wanna take a breath, okay? You wanna assess the situation. What's really going on? Try to identify the problem. I work at GE Aerospace. We focus on lean and Kaizens, things like that. One of our favorite sayings is, a problem properly identified is a problem half solved. Okay, so you really want to understand what's the problem and identify the players involved. Try to empathize with them. What are their justifications for behaving the way that they're behaving? What are their motivations? Because that's going to play into what sort of solution you put in place. All right, after you take a breath, breathe, gain your composure. Next slide. You're going to want to think it through. Really consider what options you have available to you. What are the consequences of those options? Think of different alternatives, different ways you can go. And the next slide, you're gonna start to execute. You're gonna plan for success. Don't just jump right to the thing you wanna do. Think about other tweaks and modifications you can make to the team or to the situation to really set yourself up for success in the long run. And then, as we say in the Army, when in charge, take charge. Go and execute. Be confident, somebody say confident, be confident in what you're gonna do. Pursue that plan, and then when it changes, the situation's gonna change, just like Shackleton, be adaptable, all right, and make it happen. Okay, next slide. All right, so as I said, today you're going to define your values, you're gonna mark a line in the sand and say, this is what I care about, and you're gonna let everybody else on your team know as well. You're gonna use that ethical decision-making model on some vignettes. We've got 4 different vignettes, maybe some more, that you're gonna apply that to. And then you're gonna practice and learn from others. So everyone in here, like I said, each one of you is pretty special for being here. I promise you that someone else in here has something to teach you. I look forward to growing today. I imagine you do as well. If you come out of here the same person that you came in here, you really wasted your time. You failed today. Okay, make sure you take advantage of it. All right, with that, I'm gonna be followed by Jason Cornett, another West Point grad.
Thanks, Dan. All right, good morning, everybody. I have the great privilege today to introduce our guest speaker. And so as I get the introduction started, I ask you just to be patient with me, because as I start this, I promise you're gonna say, where is this knucklehead going with this introduction? And so maybe for students, do you have like, you see like a captain of a sports team or a president of a club, and you're like, how did that person get that position? Or if you're a faculty member, you're like, who's this superintendent? I knew that guy when we were new teachers, and I don't know how that person got to that level. So what I can tell you is that is not the experience I've had with our guest speaker today. I had the great privilege of being classmates, West Point classmates with General Mark Quander. And so we started our leadership journeys together. And what I remember about Mark from that time was he was well respected and well liked amongst all of his classmates, our instructors, just a very well liked person. We also had the same major, so we spent some time together in classes, same feeling there. And we even commissioned together as engineer officers in the Army. So just as a side note, one of the really cool things about being an engineer in the Army is you can build stuff or you can blow it up. And in Mark's career, he's had the opportunity to do both of those. So just a couple highlights on that. Mark today is the division engineer for the Great Lakes and Ohio River Division of the Army Corps of Engineers. He's been the commandant at the engineer school, and he's also been the commandant of the West Point Corps of Cadets. And so, Mark, I'm really privileged to welcome you to the stage and turn it over to you, ladies and gentlemen, Major General Mark Quander.
Hey, good morning, and it's great being here with everybody. So Stephanie said something in the beginning. She said, you only get out of it what you put into it today, and I would just encourage you to absolutely do that. This is an opportunity to develop yourself, and then to take what you learn here and go back to your respective schools and develop your own personal values. It's all about getting better. But today can't be possible without the support from your teachers, your faculty, the folks here. And so when you get an opportunity at some point in time, thank them because they're very vested in your growth and development. And they take time out of their schedule to make sure that you can be the best version of yourself. And I'd also like to thank two other groups here. All the folks from the West Point Society of Cincinnati that's sponsoring this and putting time and energy into taking time off from work, away from other things to do this because they want to invest in you. And then also those amazing RTC cadets from Xavier University, Les Stanfield, thanks for what you do, and thanks for all the folks from Xavier here supporting the event today. So Jason talked about we had a connection and relationship, and so he kind of drugged me through our civil engineering major, and so I probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you and a few others, so thanks, Jason, for that. I'm going to tell you one military story, and then that's it. But it's going to kind of set the framework for this leadership and ethics seminar. One of the most notable West Point grads of the 20th century was a guy named General Fred Franks. He was severely wounded during the Vietnam War, which led to his left leg being amputated. And despite his injury, he fought to remain on active duty, a fight he won, and would go on to command large organizations in the military during Operation Desert Storm. He was leading what many have called the greatest ground war in the history of modern warfare, defeating the Iraqi army, liberating the country of Kuwait in less than 4 days. And in his biography, he recounts that prior to launching the operation, he visited units and soldiers under his command to thank them and focus them on the tasks that lied ahead. And during one of those visits, a young soldier looked up to him and simply said, "Don't worry, General, we trust you." Those are some very powerful words. Think about that. We trust you. Those three simple words had a very profound effect on Fred Franks. And he vowed after the Vietnam War, where he saw that trust was fractured, after that experience with that soldier in Kuwait, that he would double his efforts towards building trust in the military. At West Point, we have a center called the Simon Center. Fred Franks helped stand it up, and it was about character development, because he believed that was that important to develop one's character, so that we could get to this point where people say, we trust you. I've been a leader for the Army for about 30 years, and I can think of no higher compliment than when someone says, we trust you. It's a simple word, perhaps a word that we take for granted sometimes. You can't see it, you can't touch it, or wear it like your favorite hat, but it's so powerful because it's at the core of every good relationship, and it's the foundation of any profession, whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, accountant, teacher, coffee house barista, and most certainly in our profession of arms. And it's absolutely critical to leadership. The renowned author and businessman Stephen Covey wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He said, the ability to establish, grow, extend, and restore trust is the key professional and personal competency of our time. The former CEO of General Electric, Jack Welch, said, leadership is about 2 things, trust and truth. Ceaselessly seek the latter and relentlessly build the former. And another notable West Point grad, Duke basketball coach Mike Krzyzewski said, in leadership, there are no words more important than trust. Trust must be developed among every member of the team if success is going to be achieved. So what is this thing we call trust? What do we mean by it when we say we trust a leader? And simply put, it's a combination of 3 things. It's first, competence. That thing when you know how to do your job, that you have the training, the education, the skills, the knowledge, and experience needed to get the job done. Perhaps the appropriate level of education, experience gained through internships or work study opportunities, professional certifications, and so forth. Competence is doing your duty, leading and following with discipline, continually pursuing excellence, and setting and raising the standard, and continually improving yourselves professionally through continued learning and professional development. The learning process never stops. Competence requires that you never stop learning. Apple founder Steve Jobs once said, there's always one more thing to learn. The second C, commitment, that you're committed to the values of the mission of the organization, that you're committed to upholding the standards of the profession. You hold yourself accountable, you take responsibility for your decisions, and most importantly, that you're committed to your people, that you take care of their welfare. It's selfless and servant leadership, putting other needs before your own, is treating people with dignity and respect. And if you think about it, there's another C that falls into commitment, and that's compassion. Generally caring about the people that work for you. You can't fake it. You can't certainly go through the motions, but people will know if you're genuine or not. And if you're not sincere or genuine in that regard, they might be less inclined to trust you. And then there's a third C, and perhaps the most important, and that's character. And that's the crucial ingredient in building and developing trust. It's what makes trust possible. Character is the sum total of all those qualities, beliefs, values that define each of us as a person. Those qualities and core values that are internalized, that become the essence of who we are as leaders and human beings. They're ingrained into your DNA and not something that you can flip on and off like a light switch. And that's why we have to spend time developing our character, focus on it and thinking about it. Character is your integrity. It's doing the right thing when no one's looking. It's doing the harder right instead of the easier wrong. That line, choosing the harder right over the easier wrong, it comes from the West Point Cadet Prayer. And by itself, that's a powerful statement. What I find interesting and what makes it all more powerful for me is the line that directly precedes it. Encourage us in our endeavor to live above the common level of life. Together, those lines are a call to action, a call to excellence, to be better, to do better, to live honorably and live according to our values. Because at the core of our character, the foundation upon which character is built and developed, are our beliefs and values. Growing up, our character was defined by a set of values we learned from our families, our faith, our culture, our community, and even something as simple as the golden rule. But when we join a profession or become part of an organization, we bring those values with us. But we commit to the standards and values of that profession and organization. Whether it's the Army values of duty, loyalty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, personal courage. Or it's a set of corporate values like Coca-Cola's core values of leadership, collaboration, integrity, accountability, passion, diversity, and quality. These values serve as shared beliefs, uniting us around a common cause and purpose, providing a shared identity and serving as a guide to help us to do the harder right. Encourage us to live above the common level of life, to choose the harder right over the easier wrong. If we're to grow in character and build and sustain trust, these cannot just be words, it must be an action. To create trust, to earn trust, and let me be clear, trust is earned. It's not enough to talk the talk and say, as they say, we must also walk the walk. Not just believe those words and our values, but to live them. Every day, everywhere, especially when no one is looking. The harder right is easy to spot. We often know what right is, but at times it's harder to do. And the harder right is easy to do when things are good. But when things are tough, when you're in a pressure cooker, faced with incredibly morally ambiguous situations, when you're in an unbelievably miserable environment, when you're alone and yes, even afraid, will you choose the harder right? And in those situations, that's when we fall back on our values. Our values serve as our true north and our moral compass. And when those values are part of our DNA, it becomes easier to choose the harder right. The easier wrong is done when we stray away from our values, and when we stray away from our values, trust erodes. General Powell once said about values, specifically West Point values of duty, honor, and country, and although I believe that sentiment applies to other sets of values as well, he said, you can inscribe these words on every granite block, and it would mean nothing unless those words are engraved in your heart. You bring those words alive every day by the dozens of decisions you make. And I would add, not only by the decisions that you make, but by the actions that you take. Competence, commitment, and character, all are important for leadership. All are important in building and sustaining trust. But of the three, it's character that is the most important. Competence is important to building trust. People are less apt to trust you if they think they don't know if you know what you're doing. But if you make a mistake here, and the system can absorb that, that's why as leaders we encourage you to take risk and not be afraid to make a mistake or two. Sometimes that's the best teacher. But what the system absolutely cannot absorb is a failure in character. And if you fail there, you failed at leadership. And I can guarantee you that you'll lose the trust from those above you and those that you lead. A few years ago, New York Times columnist David Brooks wrote the book called The Road to Character. In it, he talks about resume virtues versus eulogy virtues. Resume virtues are the laundry list of accomplishments, the skills and experiences that you bring and you expect to find on a resume, the things that define your competence. Whereas eulogy virtues are those characteristics and attributes that define you as a person, your integrity, your values, the things they'll hopefully say about you at your funeral, the things that define your character. And it boils down to a simple question: how do you want to be remembered? And as a leader, which of the two will people most apt to say, don't worry, I trust you? We're more effective when we're trusted to do our jobs. Trust enables speed, which in turn enables organization, businesses, even relationships to be more effective. Covey talks about that in his book, The Speed of Trust, how trust and the speed in which trust is established is an essential ingredient to any successful organization. Trust is key to leadership, as he's already discussed. They won't follow you if they don't trust you. And trust is important if we're to have an impact on those around us, our schools and our communities. And if you want to lead change, if you want to go back to your high schools and help change the culture, if you want to make it matter, that requires trust. So my challenge to each of you is to be a leader who lives above the common level of life, a leader who always does the harder right over the easier wrong. Be a leader of competence, a leader of commitment, and above all, a leader of character. Be that leader who, when it's all said and done, people will look and say, don't worry, we trust you. God bless and thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to open it up to questions. So anyone have any questions that they would like to ask? Don't be shy.
You can ask anything.
Oh, we have one in the back front.
I'll try to start us off. Can you hear me? Is that coming through? Oh, there we go. All right. Sir, I was wondering, were there any experiences that you had in high school, for instance, maybe that you look back on you think are kind of foundational to the leader that you became?
Man, you don't start off with any easy questions. For me, I'll go back to high school was a tough time. And people are growing and developing in different ways. And the thing that kept me grounded in high school, and I may not answer the question exactly, were the values my parents instilled in me. And it was stuff that it was developed over time. It was the values that my relatives instilled in me, the values that the community instilled in me, and that's why I talked about those values. And it's important because people come to a group or an organization with different sets of values. I was talking to someone earlier. I got a text from a second lieutenant now who just signed into his first platoon. And when I was at West Point, this was a person who didn't come to West Point with probably the set of values that we were expecting. And he really struggled. And people came in at all different ranges. You had the entire spectrum. You have folks here that had very strong morals and values for the organization. You have some folks here that really, really struggle. And it was based off his background and his experiences. We separated him from the academy for a period of 6 months. And he did some soul searching. And we allowed him to reapply. And he came back. And through development, through his will, he developed a set of values that we expected of an Army officer. And then he went on to graduate, and he is doing incredibly well. The reason I tell you that story is all of you have different sets of values. And they're informed by impressions from your parents, your community, your friends. And you got to vector in on the right sets of ones that's going to make you that leader that they're going to say, we trust you. And that may take some time. But that's why character development is exactly that. It's development. You just can't stop. It's continuous learning. And you got to reinforce it. And the more repetitions you have at it, the more solid that foundation is going to be so that when you do come into a tough situation, you're going to make the right decision. I'll let you pick Jason.
What was one of the most hardest ethical decisions that you had to make, and what was the decision that you made, whether it was right or wrong?
It may take me a little bit of time to think about the hardest ethical decision I had to make, but I may talk about a situation that one of the West Point cadets faced at West Point, because that one, it just comes to me right now. So imagine our honor code says you won't lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those that do. And so part of the honor code is if you see someone that's lying, cheating, or stealing, you have to report them. How easy is that? Absolutely very hard. And there was a situation where a cadet turned in their roommate because they weren't following the honor code. That part of the West Point honor code of toleration is probably one of the hardest parts of the honor code for people to accept. Because it's not about just you, it's about somebody else. And peer pressure is so tough nowadays. I've got a college sophomore. And it's tough when you're in this environment, either in high school or college. Peer pressure is real. but you have to go back to your character. Your character is those things that we talked about earlier. Your reputation is what other folks think of you, and they may not like the decision that you make, but that's because they may not have that same foundation of values that you have. But for that one cadet, that cadet really struggled with that decision. That cadet made absolutely the right decision because that cadet's values were what we expected of someone who's going to go lead soldiers in our Army. We did at West Point, we do a ethics seminar every fall. And we brought in and I can't remember the person's name. He was a person who turned in Lance Armstrong for doping. And he talked about how tough that was. And the reason we brought him in is because we wanted the cadets to hear from someone who had to exhibit moral courage. A lot of times we talk about physical courage and that's what gets highlighted, but moral courage is so much harder than physical courage. But think about that. Think about having to turn in your roommate for cheating. I didn't have to do that, but I know that that really was tough for that one cadet to do.
Okay, we have a question over here.
So through the Army, what do you believe that just a couple of things that really set it apart in your personal character development versus, let's say you went to a traditional non-service academy, and then through that, how has that continued in your career?
Say the question again.
Yeah, so through the Army or like in being in the service branch, how do you believe that's really set your character development apart versus if you went down a non-service route?
So I think West Point spends a lot of time on character development. It is foundational for everything we do. But it's important for non-service. Talk to these cadets over here at Xavier University. I know they spend a lot of time on character development too. It's just different. And so while they're going to class day to day, and I would encourage you to talk to the Xavier cadets, how they do character development. But I know they spend time on it. But it's just different between West Point and ROTC. But at the end of the day, we want both to have that same set of values and that we expected them to serve in our military and serve our nation. And then, whether you wear the uniform or you don't, we want you to carry those same values throughout life. And so it's just different, but we want the same set of values.
All right, so you've talked about how character is fundamental to leadership. How do you think a good character is defined? Is that defined by external values, internal values, or a mix of both?
So I'm not sure if I can separate. I think character has to be good. And so putting a qualifier in front of it. Now leadership's different. Leadership, you can have good leadership or bad. You can move someone in the wrong direction and lead them. And we don't want that. We want good leadership. But character to me is foundational. It's that trust. It's that doing the harder right over the easier wrong, doing it when no one's looking. And to me, I think that's good all the time. But that requires repetition and a focus on it. So that when you're in that pressure cooker situation that I was talking about, it's routine, it's instantaneous, it's a reflex when you're making that right decision.
Have you or anyone that you've known, have you ever been in a situation where you've lost sight of your own values? And if so, how long did that take for you to either redevelop them or kind of like remember them, if that makes sense?
No, it does. It's a great question. I'm not sure I've lost sight of my values, but there have absolutely been times where I've had to do some soul searching. And it's where it's not black and white. And you're trying to you're trying to work through a situation. I'll go back to something that was on the slide earlier. Spend some time defining the problem. Take a breath. And I'm not going to say when we panic, but when we do feel that pressure, take some time to depressurize a little bit, think, reflect. And most times you don't have to do something right away and you can spend some time on it. And then that will bring clarity once you kind of figure out what you're trying to solve, what you're trying to do. And then I think you'll make the right decision. But I think the times where I found myself most in that predicament is when it's been complex. There's a lot going on, and I'm not focusing on the problem. And so I would just say, just spend some time reflecting on the problem, and that'll bring clarity to what you're trying to do and lead you in the right direction.
What were some of the biggest challenges in high school or just your career overall while trying to build a leadership, and how did you adapt and overcome those challenges?
So Jason knows probably better than most here. You're recording this, aren't you? Okay. Hey, I had a funny nickname in high school, and that translated to college. So my nickname was Fozzie. And people used to play games with me, not only in high school, but in college. I was the folks people used to, I couldn't tell a joke. I don't try to tell a joke. And it was a bit challenging at times. I wasn't top of the class. I wasn't bottom of the class. I wasn't, probably wasn't anything remarkable, but that's not a good way to describe it. I was foundational. And I was true to myself, and I'm authentic. And so when the pressures were there, when people were trying to get you to do something that may not be in alignment with your values and what you need to do, when there's a pressure to have a popularity contest, just be authentic and go back to your values. I struggled with that a little bit when I was in college, high school as well. I've got a college sophomore that struggles with it as well. I think we all struggle with that at some point in time. But that's where you have to have the courage. You know what the right thing to do is. You know the path to go. That's where you maybe need to take some time, take that deep breath, and focus on the right path. But nope, I wasn't that popular person in any stretch of the imagination. And then the other thing I'll tell you too is, guess what? We all change and we grow and we develop. I never imagined I would be here today. If you told me in high school or college that I would be here today, I would have said you're looking at the wrong person. But take the opportunities that you have and be the best version of yourself. And that means taking every opportunity that comes your way and focus on the future.
What's the hardest reality you've had to recognize about leading young people, and what are some great habits to break to coerce growth in the youth?
Say it again.
What's the harshest reality you've had to recognize about leading young people, and what are great habits to break to coerce growth in the youth?
Yeah, another easy question, right? So y'all are bringing some tough questions. It's tough making it is, for me, when you've got folks that you really respect and it's on your team, and you've got to make a tough decision that they don't like. And I'm trying to think of something right now, but when you have to make a really tough decision, I talked about the cadet who had to turn in their roommate. I never had to do something like that, but I talked to that one cadet. I can't imagine what that cadet went through. But I think making a tough decision when you've got folks that are expecting you to do one thing and you have to do another. Probably didn't do a good job of answering the question, but it's going against the grain is really, really challenging and really, really tough. But the thing that I tell myself, I will always do the right thing for the right reason in the right way. That is my mantra, and I got that from a senior Army person, and he said, when I wake up in the morning and every decision that I make, the prism I look through is I will always do the right thing for the right reason in the right way. And with those reps and steps that we get with character development, we know what the right thing to do is. We know what the right reason is. When it's ambiguous, the right way can maybe be a little bit challenging. But that's where you take a minute, you take a breath, and you go back and try to figure out what you're trying to do.
I know you've probably met a lot of leaders that have helped you on your own leadership journey. So how do you take advice and learnings from other leaders, and how do you apply that to your own journey and help the people, yourself and the people you lead, grow?
So let me say the question again. How do I take how do I grow as a leader and then apply the things that people have given me?
How do you apply what others teach you?
Okay, so I'll go back to continuous learning. And one thing I do is I read a lot of books. And the reason I do that is because I won't always be indifferent in all these situations, but I can learn from the experience of others. There's a quote that says something to the effect of, experience is basically, if you have to go through your life learning from your experiences, that can be really, really tough. I also try to learn from the experience of others through reading. And so, reading leadership books, reading books on character. The book from David Brooks was incredible. Reading books on moral development, reading how other folks were faced with difficult moral decisions and how they overcame them. That way, hopefully, when I'm in a tough situation like that, I'm learning from others and their experiences, and I'm not having to relearn on my own through really tough experiences. I really hate learning through tough experiences. I'd rather learn from others.
After you've chosen to make the right decision, even though you know it might hurt somebody else, how do you not regret the decision and live with it and stick with what you're doing instead of just doing what's easy and not exactly what's right?
Say that question again.
After you've made the hard decision to choose what is right and turning someone you care about in and going against what other people would like, how do you live with that, not regretting your decision constantly?
Yeah, so that's really, really hard. And I don't think there's an easy way to soften that blow. Because these are folks that you care about. But that goes back to the reputation piece. But I would, what I used to tell cadets at West Point, they shouldn't have put you in that situation. Right? They know what the right thing to do was. And if they put you in that situation where you have to take that action, then they failed you. Now, today, the consequences, people are really, really mean. And it's tough. It's tough to handle that and to process that. And I'm not going to minimize that at all. But if we're doing the right thing, that goes back to your character. Your reputation is what they're going to think of you, but if they're putting you in that situation, they're probably not. They probably have some challenges that they got to work through. The internet can be a nasty place. Social media can be a nasty place. My daughter goes through this all the time. And she struggles with it. And again, I'm not going to minimize the challenges that she faced today. I didn't have social media growing up, and Having, 4,400 young men and women from 18 to 24 with all the different social media, and they're in this crucible because there's nowhere to go. West Point's pretty small. Your high schools are pretty small. And so when something like that happens, everybody kind of knows. I'm not sure I have a good way to minimize it, but maybe that's something that you can talk with folks today and see if they have some thoughts and ideas. It's something that I personally struggle with. It's something my daughter personally struggles with. But I know what the right thing to do is, and it's to take action if someone is not doing the right thing. But maybe work through that idea today while you're here in these small groups with other folks and see if we can come with a solution on how we can work through that. But I'll be honest with you, I don't have the right answer. That's a tough one.
So when you're doing like leadership and stuff like that, obviously it's very important, like you said, to have a good, strong moral compass for them to look up to you, assuming that they also have a good moral compass and they trust in that. But how do you lead someone who have lost sight of their morals or doesn't have strong ones and doesn't necessarily want to listen to yours?
So that's really, really hard. That person's got to have the will. And as much as you invest in that person, if they don't have the will, they're probably not going to change. And that's tough to accept. Sometimes for people to change, they have to learn through a tough experience. The cadet I was telling you about that came to West Point, who we separated for a period of 6 months, he had all the resources to develop his character to where we needed him to be, and he failed. And it was only when we separated him, because there's a will component there, but it was only when we separated him and he realized, I think, what he was losing, and he came back. This is a person that we gave a mentor to one-on-one to work and develop with this person. And he just didn't have the will. But it was after he left and he came back that he responded to the resources that we had to provide with him, and he fundamentally changed who he was. And so if you're investing time and energy into someone who doesn't respond, sometimes they may have to learn from hard experiences for them to have that will. But I think if they don't have the will, all your efforts may not work. And that's sometimes that's tough to accept and a tough reality, but they've got to have the will.
Okay, but we have one back here, and then I'll come
Okay.
to the front.
All right, I have an easier question for you. Oh, since you're an engineer, what's the coolest thing you've ever built or blown up?
Okay, so thanks for the easy question. In my current job, we build a lot of locks and dams. We take care of the environment. I think one of the coolest projects we're doing right now is we're building a large lock in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan called the Sioux Locks. And it's pretty neat. I think one of the other cool things, and it's not something that I'm doing, but somebody else in the Corps of Engineers is doing. You remember when the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsed? So the Corps of Engineers there cleared that federal channel, recovered all the wreckage so that they could open up that waterway again. We had a really horrible plane crash with a helicopter in Washington, D.C. I just came from Washington, D.C. last night. And we had Corps of Engineer folks recovering the wreckage from the American Airlines plane crash and that wreckage from the Black Hawk helicopter. And so the ability to help somebody out, the ability to do good for our nation really comes and warms my heart. So I've been able to blow the stuff up and build stuff, but I think helping people is something that's pretty neat and pretty cool and something I really enjoy doing. Thanks for the easy question.
Mark, thanks so much. I just want to say thank you for giving up so much of your time this morning to speak with us. I had 3 reflections on your comments this morning. So first, I was also awarded a nickname in high school that followed me through West Point, the Army, and even today my children delight in sharing that nickname with me around the house, so I can empathize with that. I think the second thing that comes to mind is when I think about leaders who really had an impact on me and my development, those that built trust were really ones that I tried to emulate on my own leadership journey. And so I just wanted to say thank you for sharing those thoughts with us, give us some time today. Actually, maybe one more thought. Usually when we ask for questions, we get more of the, coolest thing you blew up kind, what's your favorite color? But these guys came hot off the blocks today, so appreciate you taking the hard questions. I know you answered quite a few, and facilitators, I hope that means you're ready, because you're gonna be busy today.
Yeah, and just for all the folks here, there are some questions tough for me to answer. And that means that you're investing in today, which we want you to do. Take those same questions and put it in your small groups and talk about it. And you might be able to get some other answers. Again, you don't have to do this by yourself. It really helps when you figure this out with other people and you work in teams. But thanks for everything.
So Mark, we just wanted to say thank you with a small gift. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Okay, next slide. Okay, this is where we are at. So we have about 10-ish minutes as you guys are gonna transition to your small groups. So there are maps out there showing where the rooms are. The 300s are upstairs, the 100s are downstairs. I think there's only 4 rooms downstairs, the rest are upstairs. There's stairs here. If you walk all the way through, there's stairs in the back to head up to the rooms. So again, you heard a lot of great things this morning. You had a lot of great questions. Use this time wisely in your small groups to discuss, to answer, to learn something. So after lunch, when we come back in for our final session, I'm gonna ask all the small groups, one person to tell us what they learned today or what they're gonna go do. So again, try to make the most out of today, learn something from your peers. Okay? Go ahead and move to your groups.
With froze on my